Hi, Chris from Divine Key, spelled QI, here with a quick video just to answer some questions. I had posted a question on my Facebook feed asking if anyone had any questions related to Tarot, Angel, or Oracle decks. And I did get a few questions, so I wanted to pop on quick and answer those questions. If you have a question, if you're just finding this video, go ahead and pop it in the comments. It'll notify me and I'll come back in with a second video if I get some more questions, or I'll answer it right on this thread related to this video. So, um, as an energy worker, anyone who's worked with me or taken a class with me or a workshop knows that one of the main things that I always emphasize is you want to start by setting the sacred space. So I like to take a moment to just connect to source, whatever that is for you. It's not religious based necessarily, it can be. So it could be God or the universe or Gaia or whatever it is. So connect to your source energy, and then send up a brief prayer or intention, set an intention that only um, good and truthful information comes through for the highest good of all, and that no harmful information will come through during this session. It can be very simple. You can make this much more elaborate. You can smudge and set crystals and all sorts of things. But really, it you can just take that moment, connect to your source, and set the intention that all information coming through will be truthful and helpful for the highest good. And that is my intention. Thank you, source. And then beyond that, then I just dive right in, usually to the readings. And in this case, I'm going to dive into the questions. I have them here on the side, so I'm going to read them. Penelope asks, do you read angel cards differently than you read tarot or oracle cards? Actually, I'm going to hold on that question. I'm going to go to Wendy's question, which says, what's the difference between tarot and oracle? So, Wendy, the difference between tarot and oracle is tarot is an ancient system, an old system. It's not really ancient, it's not like runes, but it is typically 78 cards. There are 22 major arcana cards, which are the ones that you see a lot of, like the moon, the sun, death, justice, those kinds of cards. They're called the major arcana, so there's 22 of those. And then there are 56 other cards that are very similar to normal playing cards. So they go from ace to 10, and then there's court cards associated with it. They're called the minor arcana. So every tarot deck is based on that structure, and then it can vary. Some have additional cards thrown in, and the imagery can change depending on the artwork. Now, the Rider Waite Smith deck is the one that you see most often because there's no copyright on the images. So anyone who wants to can duplicate those images and use them for their own use. So that's the one that you'll see most often. And that's the one that most people call the teaching deck. That is the one that I learned on 40 years ago. But it's not my favorite. I can read it, and I do actually, even after all these years, I will see things within those images that will give me new messages that maybe I didn't notice before when I was reading it. So um, that's the structure of tarot. And each of those cards have a traditional meaning. So, like, every person who's learned traditional tarot would know what the, you know, Five of Wands means. And there is a basic understanding, like a base knowledge related to that. And then readers like me, we will dive in deeper and we'll tap into our intuition to get more messages related to whatever's going on. Oracle cards are basically a set of cards that are based on a theme. So there's usually something that ties all the cards together. They can be any number of cards actually, but most of the oracle decks I see run about 40, 44 to 50 some cards. They're usually less than 78, and they often have words on them to help you understand what the oracle message is. But really, the key point with oracle cards is that they do have a common theme around, they're like built around a common theme. And there's no standard structure. There's no base knowledge related to the oracle cards in general. Like, I mean, if you get a crystal oracle, then the crystal properties would be the base structure for those. But typically, there's not something like everybody knows that this is what this card means, like they do in Tarot. So, Oracle and Angel cards are similar that way. Angel cards are they're basically Oracle cards that are based around the theme of angels. So, some will have words, some won't have words. It doesn't really matter. But they are based around the angels. They can be archangels, angels in general. Some angel decks are actually based on the structure of the tarot. So they take the structure of 78 cards and then they superimpose it on the theme of angels. So angels aren't always oracle. It just really depends. I actually see some decks that are called oracle decks that are basically based on the structure of the tarot. When you actually dive into the energy, you can tell and you can feel that there's an overlap of the tarot cards with the oracle cards. But typically, that's the difference between tarot and oracle. That was a lot of information, but so as a beginner, if you're asking, like, say, what should I start with? It doesn't really matter. If you really want to learn tarot, you want to start with a tarot deck of some sort and learn the basic structure. And if you just want to be able to tap into your intuition and understand it, it doesn't matter which deck you use. I do find that sometimes, although you think that the words on the oracle decks would make it easier to read, it kind of restricts your ability to tap into your own intuition because it kind of prompts you in a certain direction. So, um, I find oracle decks with words on them are good if I want to read for myself because it's a little bit more objective. I'm just getting the card as it comes up and then I can read it. Although I have gotten better with reading for myself because I can detach from what I want the results to be and really just read the energy of the cards. So if you really want to tap into your intuition, I would say it doesn't matter which you go with, tarot or oracle, but you probably would do best to choose a deck that doesn't have words printed on it. Um, that way you have the option to go to the book and follow up and read what the author has to say about them, but you also have the opportunity to just fully intuitively read that card. So that kind of answers Penelope's question, which is, do I read angel cards differently than I read tarot or oracle cards? And I don't really, because I read intuitively, whether it is tarot or angel cards or oracle cards. I just pull the card and I tap into the energy of the querent, the person who's asking the question, and source just feeds me the narrative and I just relay it actually. So for me personally, I don't read them differently. I often use oracle cards in my professional readings to bring in like a next step because they're very specific usually. They give you like a specific energy. So it's kind of how I close out my readings is I'll pull an oracle card that will give you the next step to proceed with whatever the question is you were asking about. Um, so Pan has asked, what is your favorite deck and why? It's really hard to choose a favorite deck. I learned on the Rider-Waite deck, the most common classic deck, and it is not my favorite. So I can say that. I can use it, it's okay. But I'm really drawn to the art. So it really depends on my mood. Like, I probably only have like 7 or 8 tarot decks, and I probably have 4 oracle decks currently. I'm constantly switching in and out. Sometimes the deck I use for a while asks me to pass it on to someone else who is more suited to it. So my collection is always changing for the most part, but really it just depends on the day. I will grab a deck and it will tell me whether or not it wants to work with me. And I don't really have a favorite. I do enjoy the Crystal Tarot by Elizabeth Trevisan, I think is how you pronounce her name. It's kind of like stained glass. It's very beautiful. And hold on a second, and I'll get it for you so you can see what it looks like. So it doesn't look like I have that with me here. I'm at home. That one must be my studio. But really, I love the art. So my favorite deck will change day to day. It'll even change moment to moment, or even for whichever client I'm working with. So I don't have a favorite deck. You just have to go with whatever it is that you like. Pan also asks, how many cards do you pull for tarot versus oracle cards? That kind of goes along with what Penelope asked me. And I don't have a certain way to do tarot or oracle. I don't follow spreads very often. I find that when I create, like if I have an intentional spread, like the Celtic Cross, which is the way I used to read, that my logical brain wants to be involved to figure out how does this card relate to this position. Oh, and what is that position? Remembering what does this position mean, and all of that. If you use it more and more, of course, you just know what the positions are. But I still find I get distracted from my intuition when I use spreads. So I'll just lay out 3 cards. Typically, I can just lay out 1 card and give you a full hour reading on 1 card. But most people aren't very satisfied with that. They kind of want the process of having cards in front of them. So I'll lay out 3 cards, which will give me a basis to go on, and then I'll pull additional cards to clarify. And I will intermix tarot and oracle in the same reading if I'm called to do so. It just really depends. So there's no standard structure. I would say my standard read is 3 cards or 4 cards. And then I go from there. And it can stop at those 3 or 4 cards, or it can be, 15 cards by the end of the reading. It just really depends on how far we dive into the question and whether or not the messages have been teased out yet. I do typically pull the bottom of the deck as an overarching energy. So whichever one I'm using, when I do a spread, I'll pull the bottom card as like a theme for the reading. It's just something I do. It helps tie it together for me. But that's really the only card that has a specific meaning for me. And I actually find my clients enjoy the ease of the smaller spreads more than like the Celtic Cross, because I was finding that my clients were getting overwhelmed with information. So this helps them, and I will do multiple questions in a session so that having a smaller amount of cards to read from is sometimes better because we can find the answer quicker, and then we can move on to the next question and get more detail on each question. So Beth asks, do you always ask the client what their question is first, or do you go with what source gives you and then ask? Well, I leave it up to the client. Whoever I'm reading for, I will tell them they can ask me the question, or they don't have to tell me. They can tell me. It's really up to them, but I do say they do need to have an intention or a question to start with. You don't want to just go in and just start pulling cards, because you're just going to get random information. It's not really going to be helpful. And the whole purpose, in my opinion, of doing any kind of reading is that you're seeking some kind of guidance or information or a different perspective on something that you're trying to get a handle on. So, in order to do that, you really need to focus in on an intention or a question. And it can be a general question, as if, what do I need to know for my highest good right now, or what's the most important thing for me to know about right now? And you will get some information related to that, but it won't be very specific. I do find that the more specific and detailed the question is, whether I know it or not, whether the person has said it to me or they just keep it to themselves, it doesn't matter. But when the question is very specific, then they get very specific answers related to that. Um, I sometimes actually like to read blindly, which is not to know what the question is, because then my logical brain is completely out of the picture. It doesn't have a role. But if I know the question, I will try. Sometimes my brain does just want to try to figure it out. I'm a problem solver by nature. So it's a little bit of a battle sometimes to disconnect my logic from my intuition. Um, but it's not really about me. I'm not the person answering the question. I'm not the know it all. I'm not the answer. I don't figure this out for my clients. I am just a vessel that allows the message from source to be spoken to them so they understand it. So my best readings come when I completely detach my logical mind and I allow source to come through me and provide the information that makes sense to my client. Um, and along with that, usually if I'll get messages in different ways. Like I'll see a little movie or a picture or certain words or phrases will drop into my head. And it's in those moments when it seems like I have no idea why this word is coming in, but when I relay that to my client, those are typically the ones that they have aha moments with. That's typically when my client says, "How did you know that?" And I didn't know it at all. It came from source. Source knows what my client needs to hear. And who am I to be discerning enough to decide whether or not my client should know this? I have asked source, give me the best truthful information for the highest good. So I trust whatever comes through needs to be relayed. It's the way it is, and that's how I work. So not all readers go do that, but for me, I trust my source energy. I trust the energy I'm tapping into, and I trust that when I set the intention at the beginning, that it's for the highest good. That all the information coming through is um, information that the client should hear. So that's how I do that. Diane has asked, have you ever not gotten a message, blank, emptiness, or just not cohesive or ambiguous information? Yes, absolutely. Um, I do sometimes when I sit down with somebody, especially if I'm working an event and people are just coming in and doing a quick 10-minute read, like as a try me read during a public event and it's not a private session, especially with other readers or other very sensitive people who work with energy. Those are the people who are often the toughest to read because they've learned how to block the energy. They definitely, I've had people who've come in and it has been complete nothing. It's been an empty blank slate, like a whiteness, a blank wall. And I don't push in that case. I do wonder, why do they sit down and look for a reading if they're not open to receiving the information? But it could also be that whatever it is that they want to message on, they're just not ready to receive it yet, and that happens. So therefore, I don't get a message. In that case, they can still get a good reading. See, here's the thing. There, especially if you're working with tarot, there's a basic knowledge, there's a basic meaning to every card. So every time someone sits down, you can give them a reading based on just the traditional meanings, and it'll be a decent reading. I mean, it will give them information, it will give them insight, it will give them guidance. I mean, just in general, the tarot will give you information. The added piece where you tap into the energy and you get specific information, that's the piece that sometimes I get blankness on. I don't have anything that comes in sometimes that's very specific to that client, so they just get their the general traditional meanings of the cards, and there's still narrative, there's still story, there's still a way that they work together to give you information. So it's not that it's bad or worse or anything, they still get value from it. It's just that those specific details that sometimes make people really um, understand that the message is theirs alone, those pieces you're not getting. So so that's how that happens, um, with the not cohesive or ambiguous. Sometimes, like, someone will come in looking for a particular, like, say, a question on romance, and everything that comes up is pentacles. And the pentacles for me is not to relationships, it's not anything to do with a relationship with someone. However, if someone has specifically asked me a question, say, related to partnership or relationship or romance, and I get all pentacles, then, you know, for that, it's like, how does the pen, like, what is it in the real world, like, what's the physical manifestation of their relationship? And for an example like that, it could be that their partnership is, depending on what pentacles come up, it could be showing that it could be kind of rocky because related around finances and money, and depending on which pentacles show up, it would say which part of their finances would be the problem. So, so that's how I read, and those are the answers that I have for these particular questions. I am going to be hosting some classes. If you're interested in learning Tarot or Oracle, please check out Divine Key, spelled QI, on Facebook. That's usually where I post the events. And I try to duplicate them at my website so that everyone knows um, that I have events coming up. I do have one coming up on Wednesday, the 28th, at 11 o'clock at 321 Pine Street. That's where I'm located. If you are interested in learning Tarot, it's a 2-hour class, and I give you the framework on how to read the Tarot. So, walking away from that class, you can start reading immediately, and then it's just a matter of practice. You have to practice all the information. It's not memorizing the cards. I'm not going to go through each card and explain what each card means. You can find that anywhere on the internet, literally. But what I help you do is tap into that piece that allows you to be intuitive as you read. I have another one coming up on Tuesday, November 10th, also at 11 o'clock. If you're interested, check out my Facebook or my website, and we'll see you there. Thanks for stopping in. Bye.